Greetings, and thank you for joining me for episode 4 of Uncommon Voices, Uncommon Visions. I'm your host, Dr. Valerie Nyberg, and today I have with me Sarah Swayze. She is the president and founder of Empowering Youth of Iowa, and we are going to kind of talk about her program and talk about what it means to empower young folks. So I'll get started with Sarah. Sarah, can you please share with us your background and your current role in education?
My background, I am currently retired from the Cedar Rapids Community School District after working there for 20 plus some years. I grew up in Mississippi, so I'm a Southern girl. Moved to Iowa in 1979, where I have been since coming here. I'm the youngest of approximately, my mom had 11 kids, so I'm the youngest, 7 girls, so I'm still the youngest girl and the youngest child. So yeah.
Wow. So how did you get into education?
Education is one of those things my mom never made an option for us. You
Mhm,
will be educated. Even though she had an eighth grade education herself, she
mhm,
did not make it an option for us. So I come from a family of learners. We like to learn, we like to read, those kinds of things. And my mother, she always demonstrated reading to us. She would read all the time, work crossword puzzles that I hated. But, it gave me that sense of always wanting to learn new stuff. So, yeah, education was a fit.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. So what is Empowering Youth of Iowa, and what is the art of the work that you do there for that in that program?
Empower Youth Survival is a nonprofit 501c3 organization that is geared towards helping those students who are in high school, who are struggling, who have failed classes that they need to recover the credit in, or
Mhm,
just those students who have dropped out or traditional school is not working for them, but they still want to continue their education and they want to graduate and get their high school diploma. So Empowering Youth Survival is there to help support these kids, to help guide these kids, and to get them where they need to be. So when they graduate, they have that piece of paper and they have built up that self-esteem that says, I can do this,
Why
regardless
do
of what life.
right, sorry. Why do you think
Right.
that's so needed?
Because if you look at the data, a huge percentage of our African American low income students are dropping out of school or just not completing school. I
Mhm,
mean, we're talking about a gap of about 20% or more
mhm,
between the white race and minority race.
mhm,
That's a huge gap. We
mhm,
cannot continue to have that. And in the state of Iowa, where there is such a low percentage of African Americans or low other ethnicity groups,
mhm.
that speaks a lot about the gap that exists. And if we continue this gap, then our society as a whole is jeopardized because every dropout places a $300,000 plus burden on society throughout their lives. And we can't have that. You know, these kids are our future, so we have to be there to catch them. And being as though they're from low income families, their families do not have the money to pay services like Sylvan to help them. So Empowering Youth of Iowa is necessary because it's a totally volunteer program that works on the student schedule versus the student working on our schedule. So we're here to assist the Cedar Rapids Community School District and make a difference in the number of low income minorities graduating from the district.
That's awesome. And the programs you have is credit recovery, after school programs, high school extension, and a food pantry. Can you explain kind of why that suite of services?
Well, we started June 14th of 2021 with the credit recovery program.
Mhm,
So our aim at that point was basically to just give the kids a platform to come in and recover those credits. But as we got to working with kids, we learned that there was more and more needed. So
mhm,
that became okay, not only the credit recovery, but those students that are, let's just say, for instance, getting suspended.
mhm.
Instead of having them sit at home, why don't you come here and we can still have them complete the coursework? So it became an alternative to just having them sitting at home, or and then the high school extension program, that's a program where if kids are so far behind, like we have one student coming to us now who are 25 credits behind.
Oof.
And what we're going to do is we're putting that kid in what we call draft courses. And those draft courses are based on just what the state says you have to have, not all the extra stuff, just what the state says each student has to have to earn credit and to graduate.
Mhm.
So it moves them faster through the system. Yeah. And so the good thing about it, they stay a part of the Cedar Rapids School District. They can graduate when they graduate from the Cedar Rapids Community School District because EYI is not a program. We're not a school. You
Mhm.
know, we consider ourselves a community. We're a community that helps the schools come together and help the students. Yeah.
That bridge.
That bridge. Yes, I like that.
So you named your program and your business Empowering Youth of Iowa. What does it mean to empower to you?
Empower means to give those kids what they need to help develop those skills that are going to give them the skills they need to make choices, to make those decisions that's going to impact their lives in a positive way, to think through, to problem solve, to understand where you need to advocate for yourself, to set a goal for your life and to stick with it. So that's what it means to empower those students. So uh, students feel like they don't have power, which is not true.
Mhm.
So therefore, it became empowering youth because we want to give you that power to take control of your life. Yes, listen to your parents, listen to your counselors, but at the end of the day, you are in control of where your life is going to go. We're here to guide you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And trust of obviously building trust and rapport with those with students is really important. So how do you do that from day one when they walk through the doors?
Well, day one, when they walk in the door, I talk to the students about what got you here.
Mhm.
And I could hear that from the parents, I could hear that from the principal, but I want that student to be upfront and honest with me. What got you here? And once they do that, then I say, okay, I heard your story. That's behind you now. You come here with a clean slate. Let's keep moving. Because the point of empowering youth is not to judge.
Mhm.
They've been judged too many times. So we don't want to judge. We just want to help them create a new path for themselves. And it starts off by building a trusting relationship, but not only with the child, but with the parent,
Mhm.
that the parent know that we're asking you. So that becomes through communication. And I think one of the things that catches all kids by surprise in the program is that immediately before they even leave, I have them pull their cell phones out and save my cell phone number in their phone.
Mhm.
Call me at any time. I don't care if it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. If you need help, text me. I'm going to get up and help you. So I think that's really a surprise that somebody actually cares enough that they don't care what time I text them, they're going to reply to that text. And I have had students doing it all the time, texting me at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah.
I'm dead to the world at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'll just
So
be honest.
that's why I see with my phone right near my ear. So if they text, I hear the phone right away. Yeah.
I'm gonna diverge from our planned
Okay.
conversation for a second. I am a big believer in kind of looking at different examples for what people are talking about. So recently, I was watching an episode of This Is Us, which is a show I like very much. And
Mhm.
there's one character. Are you familiar with the show at all?
No, I'm not.
Oh, it's a great show. It's a really great show.
Okay.
But
Okay.
anyway, one of the character, her name is Beth, and when
Mhm.
she's an African American woman. When she was
Mhm.
a kid, she wanted to be a ballerina. So she had fought to get into this school and in this dance school, and spent a lot of her formative teenage years in that program from like 12 to 17.
Mhm.
And then her father died suddenly. And of course, with any kind of major trauma or crisis in your family like that, you kind of
Mhm.
become unmoored. And she started
Mhm.
to struggle in dance because she probably because of a lot of different things, couldn't concentrate, didn't sleep,
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm.
And her instructor who had been like working with her closely for many, many years, replaced her in a show. So fast forward 30 years, she's now an adult. She went off and got a degree in architecture, and she used to work for the city. And she got to a point in her career where she just wasn't satisfied, and she decided
Mhm.
to go back to dancing. And at during this episode this last week, she is the director of talent for this dance school, and
Mhm.
in doing so, she creates a program for kids to who want to dance at a higher level but might not
Mhm.
have access to be able to go to that school for free
Mhm.
and get the training, like really intensive training. And the
Mhm.
first thing that the first group that she brings in, they're supposed to perform at this fall showcase.
Mhm.
And when the director is looking at the one of the performers, she says to Beth, she says, oh, she's just not as polished as what we are, our typical students. So I don't think she's
Mhm.
going to be ready
Mhm.
for the fall performance. And Beth goes, nope, she'll be ready. And
Mhm.
so the young lady is out of her element. She's been, she had a history of dancing, but it wasn't to the same level as the other students. And she's
Mhm.
painfully aware of this.
Mhm.
And as she's on the stage starting her dance, she falls. And I think the reason why I mention all of this is the most beautiful part of that whole episode is Beth, even though she is afraid that if her students that she selected herself aren't successful, that she will be deemed unsuccessful, and then she will lose her credibility, whatever. And she's
Mhm.
afraid of failure. But in that moment, rather than redo to her what was done to her when she was a child, she goes out on stage, she sits down, and she goes, are you okay? And the girl says, yeah. She's like, are you hurt? And the girl says, no, I don't think so. She says, well, can you get up? And she says, yes. She says, okay. And then she sits down and she says, look. And then the girl's going, I don't belong here. I can't do this. And she says,
Mhm.
here's the thing. We can either sit here and everybody can just wait until they get bored
Mhm.
and they leave, and I will sit here
Mhm.
with you through that whole process,
Mhm.
or you can get up and we can just start from the top, and you can
Mhm.
try this again. But
Mhm.
whether you want to just quit or whatever you want to do, understand that I will never be disappointed in you. Understand you will always have my full and unconditional support.
Mhm.
And that made a difference. So can you talk a little bit about how giving kids that full unconditional support, being able to come alongside them, really helps them to see themselves in a different way?
It does, because I remember during the summer program, um, at the end of the program when we had our ceremony, and several of the kids came up to me, and one young man said to me, EYI, which is short for Empowering Youth of Iowa, it gave me what I needed to build my confidence up and to show me that I could do it. I was lost.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know how I was going to fix the hole I had gotten into.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's doing very well. He recovered the 5, 6 classes he failed.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's doing very well in high school. He stops by every Friday to see us and say,
Oh.
is there anything I can do? He wants to give back.
Mm-hmm.
Also, one of the things I remember a student writing just last week when I have them write about their experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, EY gives me a place where I feel comfortable. I can tell you that I'm struggling and you don't judge me. You just said, okay, show me. And it's not just me, but she was talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's all of the staff. She says, we say, show me where you're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the deal, the school systems, although they want to do a lot of this work, they don't have the staff. They don't have the flexibility that Empowering Youth of Iowa have. And you know this more than anyone.
Yes, ma'am.
Empowering Youth of Iowa is flexible. We're not under the red tape of the government. So
Mm-hmm.
we can reach those students in ways that the district is struggling to get to them. We have a different platform that gives us the freedom to make choices that the district would like to make, but they can't make. So therefore, this is why it's important for us to partner with the district, to
Mhm.
be that support, not to try to take anybody's place, not to shine light on the shortcomings of the district, but to say we're here to support you and the students that you serve. And that's the main goal of Empowering Youth Survival, is to help fill that gap.
Awesome. I'm trying to decide whether or not to ask this question because we've kind of already talked about like what kids need to be successful. But when I talked to you before, we talked about kind of like guidance and decision making. Can you go into a little bit more detail about how empowering youth helps break down those skill sets so that students can be and feel more confident and successful as they're navigating their path?
One of the things I do is, in our conversation, I told you I was reading a book called The Managerial Process.
Mm-hmm.
And not only do I use that on with my employees, but I use it with my students.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about, how did you get here? What caused you to get here? What can you do to not get here again?
Mm-hmm.
And it helps them, instead of me processing their issue, it helps them process the issue and see where the shortcomings are at. You
Mm-hmm.
know, one of the things we have to do, we expect kids to be like smartphones, give us the answer right away.
Mm-hmm.
We have to give young people time to process,
Mm-hmm.
because that frontal lobe is not developed. So we have to give them time to process what we're asking them. And if we're not asking that question in the right direction, we have to rephrase that question. And that's a lot of what adults and as a whole fail to do. We fail to give those kids the proper questions so they can give us the proper answers. And we fail to, I won't say fail, we are hesitant to put them in a position that's going to cause them to think. You know, everybody is thinking for them. The phone is thinking for them. The computer is thinking for them. We have to cause them to think. Because if we don't push them to think for themselves now, even in education, where they want to be in their future, then they're not going to think in the future either. So we got to start that skill now.
So do you think it's they're afraid to do it, or is it more that the relationship and the understanding isn't quite there and they don't know how to do it? Because like when
I
I
think
think
that's a
about
lot of it.
my experience with both trying to get kids to think through their why are you in my office? What did you do? Like what happened?
Yeah.
And all of those things, and them really not understanding that process of processing and not
Hmm.
wanting to necessarily do that. But in those moments, I was the authority and they were the student, and they didn't know me very well and I didn't know them very well, and so they didn't trust, or they didn't feel like they had that relationship to be vulnerable and say, I messed up here, or I could have done that
Hmm.
better.
Exactly. And we have to understand what is keeping them from being able to identify that, because sometimes it may be coming from the home where they're not allowed to say, I made a mistake without a great penalty. So they don't know how to say, I made a mistake, or they don't know how to say, I'm sorry, or they don't know how to save face in front of their friends because they don't know no one has ever modeled that for them.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to show them that it's okay to show your weakness. It's okay to say I messed up. It's okay to apologize. And that's not just on the district, that's on society as a whole, you
Absolutely.
know. And so when I'm talking, I'm not talking about just our district. I'm talking about what society as a whole is doing to our students. We're not allowing them the space to grow up. We're expecting them to think as adults just because they're 16, 17 years old. We got to take that pressure off our students. We got to take that pressure off our young ones and give them space to experiment, to fall.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm going to tell you this really quick. It reminds me of when I was a teenager and I got pregnant with my son,
Mm-hmm.
and the adults that were supposed to be there to protect me are the ones who turned on me.
Mm-hmm.
They are the ones that said she's going to be a failure in life. She's not going to graduate high school. She's not going to go to college. She's going to have many, many babies. The curses that was spoken over my life,
Mhm.
none have come true. I have two kids. I have college degrees, not a college degree, college degrees. I graduated on time in the head of my class with my peers, but they threw me away. And that's what we're doing to our young peoples today. We're throwing them away because of one mistake. And we can't throw young peoples away because they are our future.
I agree wholeheartedly. I just
Yeah.
I wonder how we work within the system that has so much pressure to produce
Hmm.
while also affording that flexibility, because I in my conversations with teachers, it feels like a lot of teachers don't feel like they have the ability to grant flexibility, or they have
Hmm.
the ability to be more humanistic in their approach because they're
Hmm.
under the gun and people are judging them. So
Hmm.
how do we in our own ways create a system that is more humanistic for both teachers and students, that they
Yeah.
can then partner together?
And that's a hard one because of the pressure that's coming down from the boards, and then the boards are under the pressure of the state, and the state is under the pressure of the federal government,
Mhm.
who all thinks that this is the way. It's almost that cookie cutter model when you go to the Ford assembly line and all the Ford escapes are made exactly the same on the same style. We expect students to look the same, think the same, operate the same. We expect every LA teacher to teach LA exactly the same way. We got to get away from that cookie cutter model and go to something more not traditional, more up to date to help our students and to help our staff, because that's one of the reasons why our teachers are leaving. But in addition to that, community has to step up.
Mhm.
Community has to go into the schools and help those kids go to class and they not hang out in the bathroom.
Mhm.
Community has to take charge of, hey, we want to do something. We don't want to just gripe about it. We want to take action, not when the lights are on, but when the lights are off.
Mhm.
Go into those schools so those administrators can do what they need to do, so those teachers can do what they need to do, and so those kids can get to class and do what they need to do. That's what we need.
It takes a village.
It takes a village, and we
Uh,
have gotten away from that village.
well, I think at large, our society seems very fractured right now
Hmm.
and very tribal.
Hmm.
And not tribal in the way of we're creating that community, but tribal in I have these goods and I'm going to keep them to myself and you can't have them, and I'm going to defend ardently against your encroachment on my property or my
Hmm.
tribe. And I feel like if we could, as a culture, as a society, and I think schools are perfect opportunities to do that, if we can change the dynamic to being a community of practice, to bringing in people who can volunteer, who can do some tutoring, who can do, provide those extra services that
Hmm.
schools are in such desperate need of right now.
Hmm.
Then we could, people can see, A, it's not as bad as we thought it was. Whatever
Hmm.
rumors are in the community about how bad the school is, it's really
Hmm.
not as bad. And B, if they do see things that are of concern, then they understand a little bit more how people are trying to cope with it, and maybe
Hmm.
they can lend an additional perspective or an additional skill or technique or something to fix it. Because I think when I think of WASH, my time at WASH, our kids needed much more individualized attention that any one
Hmm.
of us can do. We
Hmm.
tried to doing mentoring within the school, and people were taxed out. We tried different iterations of those things, and it wasn't that people, I never thought that people didn't want to do more or serve kids, but
Hmm.
when your plate is full and you're trying to balance multiple plates at one time, it's just
Hmm.
really really hard. And at this moment, we've stripped down our schools to such a degree
Hmm.
that it's really difficult.
And it's very difficult, and it's very taxing on the system and those we that are working for the system. And that's why I say we need to get those people that are retired and have nothing to do with themselves for 2, 3 hours at a time, just to go in there, even if it's just 2 hours a week, and just go in there and just walk those halls and make connections with those students. Because a lot of times the students just need to see a positive face,
Mhm.
just a positive face, someone who's not their teacher, someone who's not their principal, but someone who's just there to connect with them and hear them. And when they're upset, someone they can just talk to without judgment. Yeah.
So many times in our conversation, you've talked about connection and relationship and how meaningful those are. How would you suggest that educators begin to make those deep and meaningful connections with students and their families?
Given the time constraint that they're on, it's very difficult right now, especially with the number of teachers that are walking away from education
Yeah.
and the number of teachers who are required to cover several classrooms right now. So, to be
Yeah.
fair, I know it's a difficult journey,
Hmm.
but we have to figure out a way. So, to make suggestions on how they're going to do that at this point
Hmm.
will be hard because they're so taxing as it is. And I know they have their own families. But
Hmm.
my thing is, when that child is in front of you, it's nothing to say, John, how are you today? John, I see you're troubled. Hey, you want to talk about it? You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe John just needs somebody to recognize that he's existing on this world, and maybe it's your hello that's going to stop him from going home and saying, I want to kill myself today. You
Right.
know, that's all it is. I mean, it's not something that's going to require a lot of energy, but it's just simply acknowledging that child. And when you acknowledge that child by their name, they know they exist. Don't teach to those who sit in front of your class, teach to those who sit in back of your class,
Hmm.
because they're sitting back there for a reason. Teach to those who barely say anything because they're not saying anything for a reason. Just make the connection. Hey, how are you today? You don't have to have a conversation. They at least know that you acknowledge that they are there and they're part of your classroom. But another thing I have to say, in my years of teaching, I was always taught to beware of the makeup of your classroom. Beware of the makeup of your classroom. Beware of the people that's walking your hall. Know who you're dealing with. Don't just make them another one of those students in the building, because that child is somebody's child.
Hmm.
And you want to treat that child like you want your child to be treated when your child goes into a classroom. So don't think that because you are the authority in the classroom that you can't come off that platform and make a connection with that student. That's it's simple task and everybody can do it.
I would argue that some of our harder to reach kids, they might reject those attempts, but they still count them. I mean,
They
it
count
still
them.
matter. It still matters to
Hmm.
them, and
Hmm.
you might not find out for 6 months or even a
Hmm.
year, but it matters to them even when they out and out reject you.
Hmm.
um,
Exactly.
that's hard for adults to work with, but that's
Yeah,
adolescence.
exactly. That's, and it's, don't take it personal,
Hmm.
because sometimes their reaction is not even against you.
Hmm.
I have had students walk in EYI and look me up and down like I don't want to be here and I don't know why. And then the first thing I remind them is this is volunteer. You have to want to be here.
Right.
I want you here, but you have to want to be here. And then I'll say, give me one day. You know, it's in that one day that I make sure that they know I'm not doing anything out of the ordinary, but I make sure that they know that they are there. I make sure that they know that when they get ready to go home, I'm going to say, thank you for coming. Thank you for giving us a try. And then they'll turn around, and I have had this happen several times. Oh, I'll be back tomorrow. You know, it's me not pushing myself.
Hmm.
Don't ever push yourself upon a child. Let that child come to you. Just give them the freedom and the space to make baby steps to come towards you. They will come.
Yeah, I believe that, and I know that it's not as easy as that all the time as
No,
well.
it's
I
not
mean,
as easy. Yeah.
and sometimes, both sides can crash and burn, but I think that
Mhm,
the art of that is getting up and starting over and just trying again.
mhm, exactly. But the thing we have to remember is that just because they are teachers or administrators doesn't mean that they don't carry their own baggage.
Correct.
Maybe they don't know how to show that because it's never been showed to them,
Mhm.
you know? So we have to have grace on both sides, on all sides. You know, we have to understand that this teacher may be in an abusive relationship at home. We don't know, but we have to give them grace to figure out how to not put that aside, but how to work in the environment that they're in and knowing that we're there to support them. Same way with the students, because if we build that community that we're here to support everyone, that community becomes stronger.
Love at the center.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, do you have any parting words before we wrap up?
The thing I want to say is I was looking at the Iowa performances for the schools in Iowa.
Mhm.
The thing that concerns me is that in a lot of areas, 65%, 55 to 60% of the students that are in special ed programs
Mhm.
do a fifth year, they graduate in 4 years. The other 40 to 35% do a fifth year. We
Mhm.
have to do better. I wouldn't want to send my kid to a school that I know automatically they're going to do a fifth year school because they're on in special ed.
Mhm.
We have to do better. But one of the things I want to say is Empowering Youth is not the only organization out there that cares about your child. Parents, regardless of what you believe, the schools care about your child. The schools want the best for your children, and they're doing the very best they can. But we need your help. We need you to get on board. We need you to support our staff. And as much as we love our kids, don't believe everything they say.
Truth.
You know, don't believe it because sometimes they twist things so that because they know you're going to come up there angry. And sometimes it's not that bad if you just sit and talk. Just sit and talk. No threats. Communication goes a long way. But parents, community, the schools need you. We need you. Everybody that's trying to uplift your child needs you. The churches got to do better. Step in there. You're part of our community. Yeah.
I agree. I think the more I've been in education, the more I feel like community is really at the heart of a good educational system.
Hmm.
And I know that it feels like in the last 20 years, everybody is more taxed and busy, but
Hmm.
we're only going to get through this if we can work together and we can find ways to really be strength space and really
Hmm.
focus on the assets that everyone is bringing, because
Hmm.
I've never met a person who didn't bring something to that
To the
situation,
table. Hmm.
who didn't, like, some of the most troubled kids I think are some of the most brilliant kids I've ever met. They're either the most charismatic, or
Hmm.
they're the quickest thinkers, or they have a set of skills that they're misapplying
Hmm.
because they don't know how to apply them more in a more pro
Hmm.
social way. So I think,
Hmm.
working with parents, working with programs like yours, and
Hmm.
really rethinking where boundaries are,
Hmm.
reconsidering those, and even playing with them a little bit more will help us to all get through this very, very difficult time in education.
And that is true. And I think COVID and um, the ratio here in Cedar Rapids, it has greatly impacted our youth and their academic careers. But we have to pick up the pieces. Those things happen. Yes, we know they happen. COVID is still around, but we have to become creative in education to meet those things that are coming because COVID is not going to be the last thing we're going to deal with in life. So we have to be ready the next time this happens to say, we have a plan. Let's go for it. You know, I don't know what that plan looks like, but we have to be prepared. So
Well,
yeah,
and I think a big part of being prepared is also being more comfortable with uncertainty because we don't know
mhm.
what's around the next
We don't
corner.
know what's around the corner.
And I mean, economically, socially,
Mhm,
in every facet of human existence right now, I don't think we have really good ways of predicting what 10 years down the road is going to look like or what 20 years down the road is going to look like. So some
mhm,
degree of becoming more comfortable with that uncertainty, but also with being very strategic about how we do approach those unknown factors, or
mhm.
those surprises like the derecho.
Yeah,
No one had even heard of derecho until it happened.
till it happened. Yes.
Right.
So basically, if I was to um, do a part in line here, I would just say empowering your survivor. It's about the students. It's about giving those students the path, helping them get on the path that they need towards success, being prepared for their shortcomings and enhancing their strengths
Mm-hmm.
and their strugglings, even if they have dropped out of school. Cynthia Phillips and I have a plan. We can plan something to get them back on track, but we need you to bring them to us first so that we can save them. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. And thank you for that. So I'm going to wrap us up.
All right.
This has been a really great conversation. I really thank you very much for coming on the show. This is Dr. Valerie Nyberg, and this is the 4th episode of Uncommon Voices, Uncommon Visions. And I thank you for coming and listening to us as we've had this really great conversation about what it means to empower, kind of how the system of education can bend and redefine those boundaries so that we can work together to create a community that benefits all kids.
Yes.
And I thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.